Right, good morning, grade nines. So today we will be doing social studies, and I need you to please go to page 119, and we will be doing the lesson on America Revolts. So now we'll stop sharing that, and we will go immediately to the book. So on page 119, please, grade nines, I need you there. So obviously we have looked at the European Revolution this semester, and we know that the European Revolution was all about bringing new ideas, bringing new ways of doing things, and things being based on evidence, things being based on scientific facts and evidence. People wanted that during this era. And here we have a lesson, America Revolts. Now, America was also part of this revolution in a certain way, and we will find out which way in this lesson. Revolts means to rebel, to stand up against whatever was being imposed on them. So here we see that Britain comes into existence. I need you to follow while I read this and highlight key information. Britain comes into existence. How did they come into existence? Upon uniting the governments of England and Scotland in 1707. When England and Scotland's governments united, this is when Britain came into existence. A new kingdom was born. The kingdom was known as the United Kingdom of Britain. The existence of such a kingdom appeared after the Glorious Revolution, which took place in 1688 and led to the development of a Bill of Rights, which granted the Parliament the right to set laws. So these two, England and Scotland, had the right to set laws. America was obviously not impressed. As a result, the Parliament worked with the monarchs, who selected their own ministers to help them in setting laws. Now remember, this was upon uniting the governments of England and Scotland. Things changed with the death of Queen Anne, who had no heir. A heir is someone who takes a position when she dies. A new dynasty, therefore, ruled by Protestant rulers of the German state of Hanover, was established in 1714 upon granting them the crown, since they were the nearest relatives to Queen Anne. This must have caused a problem. What problem did it cause? The new rulers, George I and George II, were not aware of the British system. That was the first problem it could have caused. They were not aware of the British system and did not know any English. That was the second problem. Accordingly, their ministers were entitled to deal with the Parliament. In 1757, William Pitt became the head of cabinet and could acquire Canada and India upon participating in the 7 Years' War. Britain remained powerful in North America. Of course, America did not like this. Why? We're going to find out. And that is why America wanted to revolt. They started rebelling and going against the British system. Britain remained powerful in North America and could not control 13 colonies on the eastern coast of the United States. They could not control it. It was too much. The prosperous colonies attracted people and reached a population of almost 1 million by 1750. Now, let me enlighten you. Let me bring you to some knowledge about what colonies were all about. Britain was very powerful during this time period. As we know, and if we look back into history, we see that Britain almost colonized more than half of the world. Now, to colonize means to take over land, to take over a certain area and start running it for the benefit of yourself, whether that benefit is financial benefit, economic benefit, or in other words, other benefits, okay? The prosperous colonies attracted people and reached a population of almost 1 million by 1750. The colonies had their own legislatures. Legislations are almost as like rules and systems put into place. And their merchants refused to allow the British government to interfere in their own affairs. This is almost where the revolution starts kicking off, where it starts happening, where America starts revolting in these colonies. They don't want to be ruled by the British. They want their own independence. They want to run their country on their own. That's your first page. I want you to turn over to page 120 now, please. Let's turn to page 120. Now the American Revolution kicks off. What does it mean for the revolution to kick off? It means for the revolution to start. How did it start? After the 7 Years' War, the British who occupied the colonies in North America decided to gain more revenues. Revenues are like taxes and money from these colonies and use them to cover war costs. As such, they taxed the colonies, and as a result, heated protests. Protests are like marches and people rebelling and resentment among the colonists. There was a lot of unhappiness, okay? In September 1774, a group of colonial delegates organized the first Continental Congress in Philadelphia and denounced taxation. Of course, the Americans were not happy. They weren't happy for the British to come and tax them. So they denounced it. They were against it without representation. The armed conflict eventually kicked off in 1775, and after the skirmishes between the British troops and colonial militia men in Lexington and Concord. So now we heard about the bloodless revolution on the previous page, the one where the revolution didn't have any war, but now the Americans are starting to revolt, and they are prepared to go to war for their freedom. Within the same year, the Second Continental Congress, this is like a meeting, convened in Philadelphia and voted to form a Continental Army with George Washington as its commander-in-chief. The Americans were not going to accept that the British just tax them and take over their land and colonize them and take away their power. The Americans wanted their independence. By the following summer, the rebels, the people who were against this system, waged a full war for their independence. Independence means they wanted to do things on their own. July 4, 1776, marked the Declaration of Independence, which was approved in the Second Continental Congress. So now, America gets their independence. In 1778, France joined the war and supported the colonists, a fact which changed the nature of the war from being civil to becoming international. France then decides, right, we're going to join the British. We're going to support them. We're going to support the colonists. But now, when they got involved, this war, this civil war became international. The Americans faced several setbacks. Setbacks means challenges between 1779 and 1781. These included the defection of General Benedict Arnold to the British and the first serious mutinies within the Continental Army. In 1781, the British surrendered at Yorktown. So now the British surrendered. They gave up. They didn't want to tax the Americans. They didn't want to take away the Americans' independence, because now America was fighting against this system. And the Americans won their independence. So we all know that July 4 marks the day of independence for the Americans. War did not officially end, though, before 1783. The war wasn't done. British forces kept their stations around Charleston, while the powerful main army continued to reside in New York. Though neither side would take decisive action over the better part of the next 2 years, the British started withdrawing their troops from Charleston and Savannah in late 1782, thus declaring the end of the conflict. So only in late 1782, it came to the end of the conflict, only when the British started withdrawing their troops. They started taking their troops out of the colonies in America. British and American negotiators, guys, a negotiator is someone, is like a mediator. Negotiators are someone who try and make peace or try and make an agreement between America and Britain. They signed a preliminary peace term in Paris late that November. So they wanted peace. The people needed the peace. And on September 3, 1783, Great Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States in the Treaty of Paris. So now, after this peace treaty was signed and the negotiators came to an agreement about the two countries, then only did Great Britain formally recognize the independence of the United States in the Treaty of Paris. So we could obviously say that America's revolution, their revolting, their rebelling was not in vain. It served to their purpose and to their independence. Let's go. I'd like you now to turn to page 121, please, grade 9s. This one. This is a bit of a bad copy, so please have your books open. So let's read through this. Overthrowing the British had many effects on Britain and the American continent. So the Americans overthrew the British. They overcame them. They were victorious in their battle to gain their independence. And here it says, Lord North, the Prime Minister of Britain, resigned in disgrace after he could not put an end to the violence in the colonies. So yes, the war might have been ended, but there was still violence in the colonies. The British evacuated Georgia. They left Georgia. This state, Georgia is a state in America. They left Georgia and went back to South Carolina. The last British troops left New York in November 1783, together with many loyalists and former slaves. A loyalist, guys, is someone, it's that word there in your book, a loyalist is someone who sticks with you through thick and thin. And those were the people that stuck with the British. The leaders in the new country were those prominent either in the council halls or on the fields of revolution. So in America, the new leaders in the new country, they were the ones that were prominent. They were the educated ones, the good ones. The first three presidents after the Constitution of the United States was adopted were Washington. Constitution, it's almost like the laws of the country. So these are the order: Washington, Adams, and Jefferson. They were the three presidents after the Constitution of the United States. Some of the more radical revolutionary leaders were disappointed in the turn towards conservatism when the revolution was over. Conservatism here, guys, conservatism is when you're very closed in your thinking. You are very closed in your approach. You don't believe in freedom. You don't believe in democracy. So they were disappointed that after this war happened, that in America, there was a lot of conservatism going on. There was a lot of closure. But liberty and democracy, liberty is freedom, and democracy, you guys know what democracy is. It's when a government is chosen by the people. The people of America had a lot to say. So, but liberty and democracy had been fixed as the highest ideals of the United States. And now we know that America is the leading democratic nation of the world. So here we see, even back then, during this time, after the European Revolution, that America, after they fought for their independence, their main objective was liberty and democracy, freedom. They were a capitalist state. They were built on those values and ideals. In 1787, Philadelphia welcomed again the delegates of the colonies at the Constitutional Convention at this particular meeting. They met for the purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation. They finally decided to devise a plan for a completely new government. They wanted a new government, they wanted their independence, and they wanted a new system. As a result, the Constitution proposed led to structuring a new federal government in which power was shared between the national and state governments. The new system, the federal system, had three branches. This is important. The executive. Now, executive means people who will execute the law, people who will follow through with putting the plan that they have put in place. That's executing. To execute means to do. Who's going to do what? The legislature. Legislature are almost as the laws. The executive, the legislative, and the judicial, who will be the person judging the new system that they're going to put in place, along with a system of checks and balances that ensured no single branch would have too much power. So these are the three systems that they put in place. The executive, the people who will implement the laws, and obviously the judicial system who will govern and judge that these laws are being processed and put into place correctly. On September 25, 1789, the Congress adopted 12 amendments to the Constitution. These were introduced by Madison, who was at the time a member of the newly established U.S. House of Representatives. 10 of these amendments, known collectively as the Bill of Rights, were ratified and became part of the Constitution on December 10, 1791. The Bill of Rights guarantees individuals certain basic protections as citizens. So that is what the Bill of Rights does. It gives us protection, including freedom of speech, religion, and the press, in addition to many other rights. So this is what their Constitution or their Bill of Rights was based on. Okay? Democracy, all right? Liberty, freedom. That is what the people of America wanted in their independence. This is what they fought for. And eventually they got it. Now, I need you to turn over to the next page, which is page 122, please, which is your activity. Now, on page 122, I need you to complete this, please. And in the next session, we will also go through some of the corrections regarding this activity. So number one, what happened upon the death of Queen Anne? Number two, what is the Glorious Revolution? Number three, what happened to the British forces with the end of the 7 Years' War? And who were some of the iconic characters in the American Revolution? Number five, what ideas did the new Constitution put forward? Right. Thank you, grade 9s. You will complete this activity, and in the next video, we will look at some of the answers to these questions. Thank you so much.